You're bored.
Hey guys, here we are. This is Başak, yoga therapist and teacher, ex corporate warrior and engineer.
Hi, guys. This is Kate. We are here, and I'm a yoga therapist, and we are seekers and searchers and students of everything yoga. Welcome.
Hi, Kate. I am
Hi.
excited about today. I think I'm excited about every day. But we
Yes.
have a special guest, one of your dear friends.
Yes.
Yes, I'm so happy to have her in our show.
Me too. Her name is Kendall Webb, and Kendall, please turn on your camera and come join us. Welcome.
Hi.
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 Nice to see you. So I'm going to read a little intro about my dear friend Kendall Webb, who is here today to talk about living a life of compassionate service. I met Kendall in seventh grade. She was my first American friend.
Oh,
Yes, she is passionate, energetic, enthusiastic, smart, level-headed, and so it was not surprising to me that after working for a short time in finance at Goldman Sachs and the World Bank, she gravitated to the not-for-profit sector, where she made her mark by creating one of the first, if not the first, online giving platform for charities called justgive.org. And there's lots more we'll dive into that she does. But her latest project is in response to the recent large-scale funding cuts to nonprofits across all sectors. She founded Charity Bridge Fund just last year, or this year, as a way to help sustain the vital work of nonprofits during these tenuous and tumultuous times. Welcome, Kendall.
Thank you. That was a bigger introduction than I expected.
Oh, well, there's so much more we haven't sort of touched on, but we will. So, one of our first questions, which is sort of a basic question, it was, so how did you get involved in nonprofit work? Like, was there a moment where you went, aha, or was it a slow burn? Did you slowly decide, this is my dharma, this is my way?
I would say very slow, but internally strong, meaning I didn't recognize it as something that I could do so thoroughly in my life as work, career. I thought it was something I would do on the side. Even back when I graduated from college, in fact, I slept on your floor because I wanted in Somerville. I graduated and I wanted to work in the nonprofit sector, but nobody did that. My family definitely did not think that was okay. So I took some time off from work and volunteered at a place that was doing work in Africa. And I slept on your floor and I worked in an ice cream shop to pay the bills. And that should have been a sign for me, but I just thought it was a temporary break between college and work because I knew that I had to go into the private sector and earn funds and do all the things that we are all supposed to do. So I always thought I thought my volunteer work was always going to be something I was going to do at night or on the weekends. And only later in life, 20 years later, did I figure out a way to merge my deep burning passion that I realized I couldn't get rid of. I couldn't, it was growing and growing and growing, how to merge that with my work life. And I was really lucky to be able to do that. I feel very grateful for those pathways crossing. I don't think everybody has that opportunity.
So how old were you at that time? Like what you say, 20 years later, but I thought you were sort of doing small things all the time. But when did you found
I
what was
was.
yeah.
So let's see, I was 36 when I founded Just Give.
Mhm.
I was always working in the private sector before that. So I guess it was more like 15 years
Mhm.
after college. And I always thought I would have to stay in the private sector, but I figured out when I was in the private sector, it's actually a great story. I was in the internet world when it was brand new in San Francisco. And there was so much capital being thrown at this internet world. There were probably about 10 of us, 10 different companies at that time. And the amount of money that was being offered to us to grow in our work was really exponentially higher than the need for these services. I was doing right then a green tree nutrition, something that was giving people an understanding of ginkgo and ginseng. And then Kate, you work there. Oh my gosh,
I
look at
did.
all of our our,
I
our
know.
entwining lives here.
You hired me.
And
Yep.
yes, and we hired
For
the
the summer.
super secretary
Yes.
and
Super temp. Super
and
temp.
super temp. Oh my gosh.
Yep.
So at that time, I just couldn't believe how much money was being thrown at us. And we were then trying to make, they wanted us to make a drugstore. And we did. And I found myself coating toothpaste and toilet paper at one point. And I looked over into my volunteer side weekend world of the nonprofit sector and noticed that the internet was not being touched there. Nobody was investing, nobody was helping, nobody was offering any kind of opportunity for the nonprofit sector. And so I looked over and I thought, well, on my weekends, I'll help somebody else who I'm sure will be starting this soon. And I went to the one person who was talking about this. I met him through 6 degrees of separation. And he said, oh, yeah, come join me. We're going to take the poor public. And I just said,
Take the poor
what?
public.
Yeah,
Wow.
he
I love
wanted to make this a viable business where he could get all this capital and make a ton of money by doing this. And I was stunned and I said to him, this is called Charitable Way, his organization. He was just starting it. And I said, I have the exact opposite intention. I want to start it not as a for-profit, but as a nonprofit. And I want to give this platform for free to all 600,000 charities so that it democratizes their ability to connect with donors. And he said, okay, may the best woman win. And I did. I
Yay!
I started it.
Bravo.
I had
So
a
you
little
didn't charge.
competitive.
Yep. So you didn't
Yeah.
charge the charities and versus him charging the charities. Is that kind of
Yes.
how it
Yes.
was?
Yes, and on top of it, we were a nonprofit. We were a .org. He was a .com. So it was actually a little bit of a challenge for us because he was getting all that capital. But at the same time, I just went to a lot of Silicon Valley millionaires slash billionaires at the time that were having real successes at young ages. And I said, I can set your moral compass
Mm.
steady by giving some money. So I worked at that angle.
Yeah.
And it worked really, really well because it ended up not working for him at all after 3 years. The markets challenged him, and the nonprofits were kind of onto him. So
Yeah.
I love it because then Just Give was the standard from then on. And I really feel like if we didn't start as a .org, there would be so many private sector .coms coming in and charging 8%, 10%, 15% on these donations. And so we set the standard. So I'm proud of that. We set
Yeah.
the trajectory for that whole
And
industry.
Kendall,
yeah.
it's one thing it just stands out for me is you're in an environment in this investment bankers and this like a certain population and you grew up in that environment, but
Yeah.
then you are able to not your have your judgment clouded by their lifestyle belief systems and you're just able to separate yourself from that almost common way of doing things. Where did that come from? Do you think this is something that was within you since early childhood, or were you influenced by someone? Where did these ideas come from to help the unfortunate, to be a guide for them? Can you tell us a little bit more?
I can. It's a hard question to answer, but I have been thinking about this recently.
We are
And
asking the hard questions, people.
yes, yes, it's good. It's good to know why we do our things, our crazy things. I was born into a family that never understood my leanings in terms of they really believe that you should get the best job you can with the best salary, best prestige, best respect. And I was on that pathway because I didn't know better. I didn't know you could merge the two together. And I always thought of my lives as separate. So my work life would be sort of the way I grew up, and my philanthropic side that was something that was inside that I didn't understand why at the moment would be on the side. I think that small fire came from growing up and noticing different inequities that people were living. Both like my freshman roommate in college was from Harlem. I remember visiting her family. And Kate, you know where we grew up, there was quite comfortable living. And getting to know her family very well and visiting almost every other weekend. Her mother was amazing, working so hard and having so little and struggling so much and just trying to bring up her kids in such a dire yet joyful way. And I it really that was the first light bulb that work ethic is not what creates inequities. It's circumstances. So getting to know her and where she came from and how she was born and the generations before that, it was just very evident to me that, we are all very tenuous souls, and our circumstances are more about who we become than work or drive or anything like that. So traveling after that, I noticed it a lot. I'm fascinated, and I always travel to developing countries because I, I don't go for the architecture and the food and all of that. I really like to go into the poorest neighborhoods. And the reason why I've slowly realized is I leave these poor neighborhoods just understanding how strong humanity is. And
Mm.
I'm amazed by what people can do and how resilient they are with the conditions that they were handed. So these inequities were handed to them. And they still carry joy, but they are working so hard and everything's against them and they have no safety nets. And I was really inspired by them. And I would come home from these trips, and I always came home from my friend Gail's house with such respect and awe. And it wasn't something I would shy away from. It almost drove me closer to that sort of deeper human strength that people have when they're really faced with something so hard. And I hadn't seen that in the town that Kate and I grew up in.
Mm.
And so I really it's I like to do these what I call hand ups right now in my life to people because I just want to mitigate some of those um, inequities. And it's kind of a call to restore some balance that they shouldn't have to work so hard when there's such excess in one place and need in the other.
You
And
know,
yeah.
that's beautiful because a lot of the spiritual teachers suggest that deepest form of happiness comes from contributing to others. And it seems like this is your experience.
Yes. And Bashak, that's so interesting because I should know that, but I didn't until I read a book that I just mentioned to Kate that David Brooks wrote. It's called The Two Mountains, or The Second Mountain, I think it's called. And I really resonated with it. I was actually at another friend of ours' funeral when I saw the little blurb on the refrigerator. It was Angie Webb's funeral, and the blurb on the refrigerator of the house that I was staying at had this little 5 sentence explanation about this book. And I thought, oh, and I asked her for if I could grab it, and I took it home and read the book. It's about the first mountain in life is all of us seeking independence and happiness through success, and whether it means your job or you could be a happiness of buying something, going out to dinner, taking a trip, a vacation, talking about the vacation, all those little dots of happiness that everybody seeks every day. But those go away. They're like waves in a
Temporary,
in an ocean.
temporary.
They're very temporary. And then he talks about the second mountain, which is joy. And this is something where you create community, you're helping, you have a sense of purpose and meaning. And that when you get to that second mountain, you don't need those hits of happiness. You're not seeking a restaurant dinner, a trip, more
Because you
respect or
develop a higher taste.
it's in you. It's in you. Yes. You're on the second mountain, and that joy, he says, carries you where you don't need that anymore.
Mm.
And I really resonated with that because I'm I'm almost the opposite. I have a hard time buying things. I get hives in a store. if I travel, we did a big trip with my family, in fact. We always wanted to live abroad for a year with the kids, and we couldn't. And so one summer we said, we'll just take them on a big Asia trip to expose them to all the different cultures and educate them on the world. And so we did that for 8 weeks. And after the first week, I had a panic attack. I was in the airport and we were going from one country to the next. And I literally bent over. I felt so sick. I had never had a panic attack before.
Wow.
And my husband's like, what is going on? I don't know. And so I started explaining what I was feeling. And it was this feeling of excess and observation. We were going from one country to the next, and we were just sort of taking, and we were seeing these things, but we weren't getting involved. We weren't helping. We weren't connecting. It was such a strange, it was actually an awful feeling for me. And so my whole family had to, deal with me. And from then on, we volunteered everywhere we went, and we cleaned out poop in panda cages and
Beautiful.
did all kinds of crazy things, served rice to monks, anything I could find to say, let's not just be observers, let's really help. So, um, anyway, it's a deep part of me now that I think that's what carries me through, and that's why I don't like shopping.
Just sorry, I
I
keep
don't like
like
shopping
asking,
either.
but this is so fascinating to me.
Yeah.
You know, it seems like you've spent so much of your life reminding yourself that every person deserves dignity and respect. And what do you think it would take for more of the society to truly believe in that?
Interesting. Okay, so I had to think for a second, but I do have a concept that I wish more people thought of and knew. Um, and it's called moral humility. And it's something that I first learned at EMT. Oh, you know it. You know it. You know everything, Bashak.
No, no, no. I mean, it just touched me when you said
Yeah.
that humility, that's
Oh,
something we work on
All the
daily.
time.
So
Yeah.
it's beautiful that you
oh,
touched on
good.
that. Thank you. Yeah.
I didn't know this particular term before I became an EMT, but it's the understanding that the
How,
difference
wait a
of
second. EMT, where did that come
Yes.
from?
Oh, yes. You don't know. I
You are
told you
so
there's so much she
interesting.
does.
Okay.
She's an EMT.
What?
She saved Gary, my husband, during COVID.
I do.
Yes.
Sorry to
I
like
help.
kind of chop this conversation, but can
Yeah.
you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah. And then we'll go back to what we were talking about.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes,
All right.
absolutely. So, in our town, there's a one of the rare towns that's all volunteer fire and EM and medical training. And so, about 6 years ago, just before COVID, actually, I did the class with my daughter. I thought I was just doing it to help her get through the course because she really wanted me to do it with her because it was a very intensive course. And I didn't want to take any of the tests. I didn't think I liked any part of EMT. I'm not medical, I'm dyslexic, so I could never go to medical school. It was just sort of a foreign thing to me. But the teacher made me go through the course. And at the very end, we had to do these runs, these ambulance runs, these for 6 hours a day in Bridgeport. And I said, I don't have to do that, right? I'm not going to become an EMT. I'm just helping my daughter. And I'm learning all this stuff, which is very interesting. And he said, no, you have to do it. It's a legal thing. You're in this class, you have to go do it. So I was like, okay. And I'll never forget hugging my husband in the kitchen going, I don't want to do that. My daughter was right there. I don't want to do this.
I'm
Did
scared.
that scare us the
I was
most?
scared. I was
Here.
purely scared. And I was doing something. I am a very strong person. I know what I want and what I don't want to do. So in life, I kind of navigate that pretty clearly. But this is one thing that I got myself cornered and I had to do something I didn't want to do. So I remember that feeling of not letting my husband go. Like I was just hugging him, my feet weren't going back on the ground. But I got myself on the ground and I went into the ambulance. And what happened was fascinating. The first two calls I didn't love. We had about 8 calls that day. And the first two calls I didn't love. The third call was an accident where a woman got thrown from a car. It was dark at this point because I went into the evening shift. It was dark. We were under headlamps. There were lots of people in the street. It was at an intersection. It was super noisy. And I know the least of everybody in the ambulance. And so what happens is they said, just stabilize the neck because she's on the concrete, she's awake, but she could have been paralyzed. And so while they're doing a trauma assessment, they're cutting her clothes, they're trying to check for blood, bones, all kinds of things. I was just in charge of her head. And it was so noisy. But I remembered one thing from the book that they said, if someone is going to throw up and you're holding the head, you are now in charge. And you have to count down and turn her head and make sure everybody turns the whole body with her. And it was so loud and I was so quiet and I was so scared, but I knew that page in the book and she was going because she was going to throw up. And so I said, on the count of three, I thought I was whispering because I was so scared and I thought nobody would listen to me. I said, on the count of three, we're turning to the left. And I said, one, two, three. And to be honest, I wasn't going to move my hands if no one heard me, which I didn't think. The whole body lifted over to the left. I couldn't believe it. It got quiet all of a sudden. She threw up, came back. About 2 minutes later, the same thing happened. I said, on the count of three, we're going to the right. And one, two, three. I was a little louder that time. We all went to the right. It was like levitation. I
Wow.
could not believe how so many people in a chaotic situation, it was like a beautiful orchestra. And I thought, I want to be part of this. This is magic that you can help. This many people are helping one person. And so, in such a beautiful, listening, yet
And
busy,
what an
chaotic way.
empowerment for you to really, you
Wow.
probably felt really empowered in that moment.
Yes. And humbled. Like
Yeah.
it was about 8 or 9 of us around her body
Right.
that did that.
Yeah.
So I mean, again, I didn't feel empowered as much as
Part of a
this
group working
magic.
together. Yeah.
Yeah, I wanted to be part of that
That's
beautiful
just, this
thing.
is a great story, and it kind of ties, I think, back to what we were talking about. What would it take for society to,
Oh,
realize, right? How do we get together?
Work together so
yeah.
we can turn our society
Yes. Yes.
and let it all go and come back. You know what I mean?
Okay. So
Yes.
this gets back to why I brought up EMT. We learned very early on that the patients that we serve are not the symptoms that we see them in. They are a result of a trauma, a circumstance, a health issue. And so moral humility is this understanding of the difference between stability and struggle, and that it's something very, very small. It can be just one moment. It's a circumstance, a trauma, or a support, is what they say. And psychologists sometimes describe moral humility as the realization that the line between what we say us and them, all of us say that, is far thinner than we like. And so most people separate themselves from situations they don't like and say, oh, that's not me. But moral humility is knowing that that could be you any moment, any day. And if people, I think, really understood that and heard that, then they would shift their mentality from judgment and separation to curiosity. And instead of thinking, when they look at somebody, a homeless person or whatever, and saying, why can't they get their life together? They'd start asking, what happened? What happened to them? And what support were they missing? And how would my life be different if I was in their circumstance and I was faced with whatever they were faced with? I think that would be a powerful, in fact, that should be in schools. Maybe that's what I'll do next.
Totally.
Yes. Well,
Wow.
they do
Maybe.
much more in terms of volunteer stuff in schools, than we used to
Yeah.
growing up. Not everywhere, but I think society is trying to move in that direction. But what I also noticed though, Kendall, when you talk, and maybe this is sort of the little difference, is that you observed, you really watched and you saw and you listened. All those really important things that we're not taught to do. So it's a combination of trying to get our kids to stop and listen and look and analyze rather than just sort of fight our way
Yeah.
through to whatever success
Yeah.
or what, you know what I mean? So, and do you have three children? Do you feel as if they have learned a lot of this from you? How do you feel that has what you do has emanated in your close knit family?
I don't know yet the answer to that. I have very strong kids. They don't imminently follow what Don and I do.
As kids want.
Uh, we've
Yes.
noticed that in a lot of areas. Any area that we push, they often observe, they see it. I know they value this deeply. I know they respect what I do. But I'm also like, oh, mom,
Of
I'm
course.
a bit much.
Yeah.
I'm a bit much. I know I am.
It's not
That's
easy
why
to
I
be a
love you.
powerful woman. Yes.
Yes.
I'm a little too much.
Yes.
I know that. I can't help that. That's who I
You
am. I'm
embrace
going to be
that.
authentic.
Beautiful.
Mhm.
And I can only hope that I'm not too much that I push them away from this. I don't think so. I think we're balancing it really well where they see it and they incorporate it into their lives as they
Yeah.
do for themselves. And that's different for each of them. And I do have conversations with them about it to help make them continuously think about it. But I try not to ask for deliverables,
You
to
lay the
like
foundation and let them build their own house.
Yes.
I do have a funny story on this though, where this is where I say I'm too much. So we had a fresh air child. I really wanted a fresh air child. We had a fresh air child come the first year when the kids were very young. This was a 6-year-old fresh air child. Our kids were all around six, those ages, so it worked out perfectly, I thought. And Kayla came and I thought we had an amazing time. And I knew it was a little hard for all the other kids to have that adjustment of a fourth child come in. And she had different energy levels and different habits and different ways. And so I knew enough to wait a few months to ask the question about the next year. So I waited about 4 months and we're all in a car ride and we're having a lovely time. And I said, so I'd like to have a family vote. I'd like to talk about Kayla and what a great experience it was, and let's talk about it. And we shared our experiences, and then I'd say, so I'd like to vote on, can we have her next summer? And I want to make sure that I'm sensitive to the family. And I know I did change our pattern, through the summer. And so everybody went and told their experience, and they all voted no. I am in the passenger front seat. I am ready to strangle everybody in the car. The thoughts through my head were so awful. I, I just was like, how am I in I was thinking selfish family, but I did understand where they were very thoughtful in their comments. And their no was like not an angry no or a
Yes.
defiant no. It was just a gentle, rather not, Mom, this is more you, not us kind of thing.
Ah, yes.
And so they were very kind about it. But I just couldn't stand it. And like a crazy lady, my head was spinning around and I turned around. I said, it's not a democracy any longer. We're doing it. I, I lost my shit. I really was bad, terrible parenting. And I finally said, Don helped me cool down a little bit. And I just said, okay, I really think the vote is, you know, should we do another program or something else, some outreach, but we have to do some outreach. It can't be just a gentle no and then nothing. And so anyway, I think I slightly earned their respect back, but I don't know. I am a lot. I'm a lot. I am a
But
lot.
then
So
she
anyway,
came.
Kayla came back. Yeah. Oh my God, we were so excited. So finally, they said, no, we'd like to have Kayla. There's no other thing that we
Yeah.
prefer. So let's have Kayla back. And so Kayla came back. She is part of our family. In fact, I just got a text from her yesterday. She came out for summers for over 10 years. We see her in New York City all the time. So she's on our walls everywhere. Everybody says, who's your fourth kid? So anyway, I do have to be careful because I bring it into the family a lot,
Yeah.
but I do think it's important, and I think the next generation really needs to see it, hear
Mhm.
it, and be asked the hard questions about it and how they're going to
Yeah.
do something in their life, especially now in the last couple of years with the changes that are happening in our country.
Yeah, that brings us to actually what is your new project? Can you talk about your
Yes.
current project? Oh, yes.
Yes. So, Charity Bridge Fund. So I launched it last spring when I had spent 22 years with Just Give, building up the nonprofit sector on the online giving arena. It was very strong when I merged that organization with a global organization that was doing it on a global scale. And I moved away for 5 years from that. And I was so happy about that. But then I saw the nonprofit sector being disrupted and weakened by the defunding that was happening so suddenly. And I also got really sad that nobody was focusing on the information. There was no website. There were the organizations that were out there weren't centralizing this information for donors to understand. The media became so saturated starting in February that donors didn't understand what was happening. And so I got really sad that this information and this unraveling of the nonprofit sector and the hardship that they were all going through was going unnoticed. And so I started calling some of the nonprofits that I know and asking, how is it going? And I asked them one key question, which is, how is this different than COVID for you? It's a food bank I happened to talk to, and food banks were in terrible situations during COVID. It was so hard for them. And they said, oh my God, this is 100 times worse. I said, why? COVID was one of your lowest points. It was so hard. They said because at least at COVID, we had a lot of media, the government helped, the state helped, and donors knew to help, and we had lots of volunteers. Here, we're an invisible problem. People don't know. People don't understand that we were cut 30% in terms of our food and our funding from the government in just overnight, so we couldn't replenish it. And simultaneously, the need has been going up exponentially, both with the government shutdown, the furloughed workers needed help. Now with SNAP and Medicaid, SNAP serves 9 meals for every single meal a food bank serves. So for SNAP to be affected and to be decreased, that is such a heavy load for these food banks to carry. So you're talking about now families that now have to pay for food because these food banks are turning people away. So of course you're going to pay for food for your family if you can't get the food that you were always getting at the food bank as a hand up. I call it a hand up, not a handout, because it enabled them to work and pay rent and send their kids to school. Well, guess what? Once they pay for their food for a few months, they can't pay their rent. If they can't pay their rent, all of a sudden this family is now homeless. If they're homeless, now you have a much bigger social problem. Instead of just giving them a box of food, which is so inexpensive, now you have to pay the whole country has not just the humane aspect of that small gift that would have prevented so much, but now you have the economic cost, is what I'm trying to give to donors who don't understand that empathetic, humane side. I'm trying to say it's fiscally responsible for us to give that box of food because now our taxes are going to have to support bigger shelters, more mental health. Those kids might not go to school now. And you also have then health issues in addition because you didn't give that box of fruit and vegetables. So now you have health costs that are skyrocketing. And I am just trying to put that example in plain words for people because the media is too busy. I'm trying to centralize the information for donors and just get people very inspired to help before
It's
it's
so
too late.
beautiful that how you
Before,
tie like these big problems where it's the cause of those big problems can be actually so simple and improvable, right? Like
yes,
it's amazing that you are able to phrase that for everyone to understand and see. We are running out of time, but I have one question. How do people contribute to your organization as a volunteer or as financially? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
yes. So CharityBridgefund.org is the website. We have lots of information for people to read if they're curious about what the impacts are. We have a whole library of articles. I've also written a bunch of articles to simplify it because sometimes it's complicated. So I have simple versions of that. So to go learn, I encourage everybody to go to the library there. We also have a big volunteer group. I'm so excited in honor of AmeriCorps that unfortunately, has gone away. We're starting Bridgecorp. And so we have 35 volunteers. We have all kinds of sessions to teach them how to help get this word out. Again, it's a lot of information based, whether it be at a dinner table with your neighbor. I think it's so important because, as I mentioned, media doesn't have time to even focus on this right now. There's so many other issues. And meanwhile, nonprofits are closing, and these services are going to be closing in our communities. And so I'm really emphasizing the information side of this. And then also on our website, we have these amazing nonprofits, over 100 of them now, that have written their profile and their story of what defunding and the impacts of the federal actions have done to their causes and how they had to decrease from 16 states of school lunches down to 8 states overnight, and what those impacts are to those kids in school for truancy and graduation. So these stories are amazing, and we encourage people to read about them. Donate if you can is also amazing. Volunteer,
And
just talk about it.
how do charities, if they want to become part of your website, how do they contact you, and who do you accept on the website?
So nonprofits can come onto our site. We have an area right on the homepage, so charitybridgefund.org, nonprofits, and they can sign up right away. The organizations that we started with just those that were defunded specifically last spring, but because of the downstream effect, we now accept anyone that was affected with any downstream funding. And then we've just added a third category, which is any of the federal actions that have impact organizations. So, for example, a lot of the Medicaid cuts have affected all the public health, the rural public health clinics are
Yeah.
closing left, right, and center right now
Yep.
because Medicaid benefits all of a sudden aren't available for reimbursements. And the problem with the public health clinic is you have a nurse or a doctor. You can't have half a nurse or a doctor. So if half of your clients use Medicaid, you have to close. So anyway, I encourage we at this moment we accept almost all nonprofits because at this moment the scope and scale of the impacts are so wide that I encourage all nonprofits to come on. We have a validation they can see if they're valid, but right now I would say 90% of nonprofits are eligible.
It's
Amazing.
incredible.
Yep.
Well,
Incredible
we have
work.
very little time, and there's so much more I want to ask you. We
I
probably have to
know.
bring you back. You
Part
have such an
two.
interesting life, and
Yeah.
I just wanted to say, as a we close it. I just witness in you the compassion, the humility, the big picture thinking, and really being of service to your society, to the world. So it's an honor. So thank you so much for coming on the show. We learned
Yes,
a lot
Oh,
today.
we have.
vice
We have.
versa. Thank you for
Thank you, Kendall.
listening.
Amazing. All right.
You
And
guys,
you know what we do? We dance our way out. That's what we do.
oh yay!
Are you ready?
Yeah,
Here we
love
go.
it.
Oh, yep. Okay, that has to be louder.
Thank you, everyone,
Ooh,
for listening.
Bye. Yes, thank
Bye.
you. Check out Kendall's website.
We will post it.